And we're live. Roman, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Pouya.
Of course, I'm looking forward to all the areas we're going to talk about today. But before we get into it, I'll turn it over to you. Tell everybody a bit more about yourself, the industries you're involved in, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Okay, hi, I'm Roman. I'm 24 years old. I've been working in the construction industry for about 7 years now. I owned a handyman company in Alpharetta, Georgia for almost 3 years and then jumped back into quality control on the construction side of that. So that's what I do full time. But I also have a home inspection business, which I've been running now for about 2 months, but made my return on investment in the first month. So that was huge. And then, yeah, I'm trying to get more into the web app development side of things, but I need to build up capital before I can start really talking about that. But I have some ideas in that track as well.
That's awesome. I love that you're obviously a young entrepreneur, but you've built up a lot of experience in the different verticals that you've worked in. So, in the construction space, in the home inspection space, you've gathered a lot of experience before you ventured into the business for yourself. And that's why, in the first month or two in business, you've had that return on investment and you've had it do well for you. It's a result of your prior experience. And that's something I try to pass on to younger individuals all the time, younger entrepreneurs. And I'd love to
Hmm.
get your take on this too, since you're in these shoes yourself. People ask us all the time, myself or my team, what business should I go into? What industry should I go into? Is this a good line of work? Is this a good business model? My answer is always pretty much the same. One, you want to develop high paying skills. And two, you want to go into an industry that is in line with your circle of competence, or you understand the industry and or have prior experience within that industry. And that's something that I can see you've done. What are your thoughts on that for anybody who's young like yourself, wanting to get into certain industries? From your experience, what would you suggest?
I really say that knowing your purpose and your why is going to be very beneficial along that route because whatever it is you're going to do, you're going to have moments of failure that are going to make you want to give up. There are a lot of niche industries you can pick that you have to be like your top of your game to be really good in. But I chose construction because I was building Legos when I was like 2 years old, so I knew I had this thing for building, this knack for building. I knew I really liked helping people. Like I wanted to be the president when I was younger. Like I wanted to some way I could help people. So I took the best of both worlds and really enjoy working with people on a one-on-one level. So I get to work on my passion in that way, but I also get to thrive in the construction industry, which is a great industry. It's growing like 2 or 3% each year. It's um it's never going away. AI is not going to take over construction. It's just too skilled of a job. So knowing how to not only build things but how to direct people in building things, I think are the two biggest skills I've learned in construction. I've worked both on the management side and on the boot side, so I understand where these construction guys are coming from, where the corporate's coming from, and I try to take the best of both worlds and use it in my business.
Yeah, I love that answer. So you knew pretty much since you were really young that you want to build things, you want to help people through the things that you're building. So it seems like you always wanted to go down this path and you basically just pursued it. Um, in terms of construction and everything that you've done in that realm, when it comes to the business side of it, what have been some takeaways, some lessons? What are some things you've learned business wise in the space that you're in that maybe helped you apply that to your home inspection business?
The biggest thing I've learned over the years is there's no easy route. There's going to be challenges along every single route that you take, and you got to be planning ahead at least 3 moves, I say. Some people say 5 moves, I say 3, at least 3 moves, to where you can constantly jump and know your access around the board like if it was a chess game. And that was the biggest challenge I faced at first because I would come up with a plan, it wouldn't work, and then I'd just be stuck because I didn't know what else to do. Now, when I think ahead, I think, okay, if this doesn't work out, what's my next move? To answer your question, it would definitely just be preparation.
So nothing comes easy, and there's no shortcuts to the work, to the path, and also always preparing and having three or so moves in advance.
I would say so, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's great advice. That applies to any business or any industry. In terms of preparation, do you personally have a process? I'd be curious to know, do you have a system for preparation? Is there a way that you try to always stay those, three moves or three steps ahead of the game?
So yeah, I look a lot at a new and upcoming tech because in the construction industry we're actually quite behind on tech because things have been done a certain way for hundreds of years, and it's hard to change things, especially when it comes to things like concrete. Like we've been making concrete the same way for hundreds of years, and it's not going to change. So looking at the tech side of it, when it comes to mainly marketing, I try to use that to the best of my advantage because I'm younger and not a lot of people are using these things. So that's how I reach out to my realtors. That's how I reach out to my competition. Um, I have a website that I've been developing, so I'm working on that. But really understanding what's possible now with AI and everything else is really beneficial, I think. So it's keeping me one step ahead has really been technology.
Got it. And since you're, talking about technology and staying ahead of the game and ahead of the curve, as we're approaching, 2024 and starting this new year, do you foresee anything specific, any trends in your industry? Do you foresee anything that is going to be, high priority that you really want to focus on and capitalize on this year?
So I use a special type of software to write my reports. That's not going to change. The software has been working really well for me. It sends emails, incoming emails, outgoing emails, invoices, all that. So that's really been one thing that I do like. But one thing I want to get better at is newsletters and basically developing a system of email addresses I can use and send to realtors. Just basic information, not like, hey, use my business, but like, hey, next time you're in a home inspection, look out for something like this or XYZ. So really my main goal for 2024 is to grow my network, both online and in person, really trying to grow that network with the technology I have presented in front of me.
Yeah, and I think the business that you're in is very much a relationship based business, just like
Yeah.
most other businesses are. Sales in general is just all about relationship building. I talk about that all the time. Whatever industry you're in, it's prioritizing long term relationships over short term transactions. That's what's going to really allow you to expand and scale long term. Those relationships, those friendships, that network always comes back to pay dividends long term. They're going to open doors for you, create opportunities for you. So it's really important to look at it that way and to genuinely treat it that way as well. How important has relationships been so far to where you've gone to, at a young age, again becoming an entrepreneur and having success in different verticals? And how are you planning to build your network and capitalize on your network?
So right now, relationships have been good. Most of the people that are effective relationships, I like to call them relationships that are actually going somewhere where we can work together, help each other out, and grow together, which is my preferred relationship, is when I can help you in some way, but you can help me, not just a transfer of money, but a transfer of value. And how I'm gonna try to get that to get bigger is finding more basically meetings to go to and try to market myself in a face to face more way. If that means I got to go to realtors' offices, that's fine. I'll do that. But more like just big meetups that people are having because there's meetups on Facebook. There's a meetup app literally that you can use. There's meetups on Nextdoor. So just finding little networking gigs I can go to is going to, I think, be a big step in just kind of getting my face out there, even if that's church or something. Just putting myself out there as much as I possibly can. Can't be behind a screen all day as much as I would love to do that. You got to go and meet these people. So really, really putting my face out there is going to be big.
Yeah, what I love about your mindset is it's very solution oriented. You're always thinking about ways that you can find solutions to the problems, and this is from prior conversations that we've had as well. I can see that in you, which I think is a really important trait. And again, considering you're on the younger side, I think this is really helpful for anybody who's younger and has any type of limiting beliefs around what they can do, or maybe is just bought into some narrative that they got to follow the next hot trend or the next online space that is booming, right? And instead, look at a very practical way, like you have, of doubling down on their strengths and getting educated on areas where they have prior experience in and following those pursuits, those business models, and always looking for solutions. There's really no excuse. People ask us all the time, how do I build my network or how do I expand my network? And it's really not that hard of a question to answer. You just named
Right.
a whole lot of things you can do. go to these events, go to these seminars, join groups online, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever it might be. Reach up to mentors, higher level individuals to connect to their communities. But really, it's all about community building and being part of communities, even if, like you said, it's church. If it's a community that you're already a part of, those are your people. That's your tribe, and you want to, build those relationships, and you're going to be able to add value to them, hopefully, and somebody in that community is going to be able to add value to you, and that's how you continue to build and expand your network. It's really not rocket science, but the problem is it requires execution. It requires you to actually get up and do something, make a move, hold yourself accountable. And I think that's where people really fall apart, is where they actually have to get up and do something, have to execute on it.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
talk's all good, but action's better.
Exactly. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that because you are within that younger generation. Do you see a lot of that lack of action, that, lack of execution within your own generation? And what are some pieces of advice you'd give to them to just get up and get moving, get things done?
Well, I like to ask this one question to people, and it's just a conversation starter, but it really kind of gives you an idea of their, I guess, motivation or lack thereof. And the question is, if I gave you $10 million today, what's the first thing you would do? And most people's response, I find, is I would pay off all my loans and I would retire. And that tells me that they don't have any plans. Like all they're doing is working, going to sleep, maybe working out, and that's just their daily life. It seems like I like the people who are like, oh, if I had $10 million, I would start my own company, or if I had $10 million, I would start investing in these types of companies, or they have like a forward almost to their story. They're thinking in future terms. And I think it's important to be in the present as much as possible, but you have to look at the future.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with people that say they just want to retire, but I think having a plan, like having dreams, like you gotta still have that kid mindset of I want to do big things. And I think that's what a lot of people, they say they want to do those things, but when it takes action to do them, they just fall off the table.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think there are two pieces to solve in this puzzle, right? It's the money piece, and then it's the purpose and fulfillment piece.
Right.
And most people think it's just the money. So if you have the money, that's a great exercise, by the way. I've done variations of that exercise myself all the time, and I still do it all the time, just to realign my focus on what I really want to double down on and what I see myself building long term. So it's a great exercise for anybody who hasn't done that. You can play around with that number and say, if I had $1 million in the bank right now, what would I do? If I had 10 million in the bank right now, what would I do? If I had 100 million in the bank, what would I do? If I was a
Right.
billionaire, what would I do? And that may change. Your answers may change, and then you start to realize where your passions really lie, what areas you really want to have an impact on. You learn more about yourself, and I think self-awareness is the ultimate game. And we'll talk about that in a second as well. But just to circle back to this exercise, I think it's a really good way to get rid of the money piece and pretend that that's handled, and then look at the purpose and the fulfillment piece and
Right.
see where you stand with that. Now, it seems to me like you have a very deeply rooted drive or inspiration. Where does that come from?
I think a lot of it comes from being an immigrant, like seeing the people that helped me get to where I am now. I'm also adopted. Um, and I think I feel like I gotta pay back the world almost. I don't feel like I owe the world anything. I just feel like the best thing I can do to give back to those who've helped me is to give back myself. And I want to do that in astronomical numbers, but I think a lot of it starts with you got to put on your own mask before you help others. So the self-awareness piece and really learning about yourself, diving into studying, learning new things, trying to think and apply them to your life and just trying to grow every single day is a good purpose to start with. So for me, it's just about how can I get better so I can be better to others. And that's really my mindset most of the time.
So you do have a deeper story. I figured from the way that your purpose comes across, I could tell that there's a deeper inspiration there. And I always look for that in people because I'm personally fascinated by human psychology in general. Follow-up
Mhm.
question for you on that. Most people who have faced tough circumstances like you have, and being an immigrant I'm one as well. I moved over to the western side of the world when I was 10 years old, spoke zero English. So I'm very familiar with the dynamics and everything that goes on there. But on top of that, also being adopted in your case, and I'm sure all the challenges that have come with that, when you're looking at that, you can go two directions. You can either become very resentful towards the world and you can
Right?
start to play the victim card and blame everybody else and use that as a scapegoat to just not live up to your potential. Or you can go the route that you've gone, which is to be overly grateful, to want to give back to the world, to want to actually contribute more, right? So, talk me through that line of thinking. Were you ever on the other camp and had to talk yourself to switching over to this other direction of becoming more grateful? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it's definitely easy to look at the other side and to just be mad at the world and just think, I don't know where I come from. No one really knows who I am. Like no one understands me, and just be resentful. And then I would tell myself things like that, and then I started questioning my own beliefs. And questioning is a super skill. I think anyone who has it is a lot farther ahead than most people. And questioning yourself is big too. You got to question your own thoughts. And the question I had was, why am I mad at the world when I don't even know myself? Like, I don't even understand myself or what I want to do in the world. It's like there's no that it's just a dead road to go down the path of resentment. It's like they have the saying, expectations are premeditated resentments, and that's very true. So thinking that the world owes you something is not going to get you anywhere, and you have to have the mindset of, okay, if I got put on the street tomorrow with $0, what's my first move? And that's how I think. It's like I could always be in a worse situation, so why not just try to make it better?
Yeah, I love that perspective. You know, something we always talk about is stoic mindset and stoic philosophy in general. And they had this practice that was called fear setting, where they would write down their biggest fears and worst case scenarios. And some of these stoic philosophers would often even carry out those practices and genuinely want to feel what it would feel like if worst case scenarios had happened. So they would, dress in, ripped clothing or whatever it might be and go sit on the street corner and beg for money or not eat and fast and whatever it might be. So that's an exercise that I have recommended to people in the past to really just look at worst case scenarios directly in the eyes and realize that it's not as bad as you think it would be. And also, you always have the capability to at least get back to where you are today, let alone do a lot more than that and reach up to your potential. And I think your story is a real life example of that, of, looking at the worst case scenarios and being very comfortable that you could easily get back to where you are today. And that's just made you a lot stronger and a lot more able to withstand challenges. And if you can withstand challenges in life, challenges in business are no object.
Right. If you can look yourself in the mirror every day and go, look, I got this. Whatever happens, happens. Then you'll be good. That's another
So,
big thing is accountability meetings, I
and
find.
you do that with yourself?
Yep, every 3 months. So every quarter, just look at myself, just I review the last things that I said for the month, which were my goals. I review if I met those goals and where I'm lacking. And it gets me to think a lot of times when I'm not going to do something or if I'm about to do something, I ask myself, do I really want to talk to myself about this in the accountability meeting? So it keeps me on a straight and narrow path.
I love that. I want to hear more about that. I love that you have certain processes and systems because I'm a big believer in having more of these type of processes in place, especially when it comes to reflecting internally. And again, back to the conversation of self-awareness, I think it's the number one indicator of your level of success because if you know yourself, you can really choose your path correctly, you can make better decisions, and you can stick with those decisions long term. So every quarter you're sitting down and you're having an accountability meeting with yourself. Are you writing it down with a journal? Do you have specific questions prepared? Walk me through that.
So I do it in the mirror. So I'm facing myself and I basically act as if I'm talking to a council of people. Like I'm like, okay, first thing on the agenda, we wanted to get the certification within the next 3 months. Did we get the certification? Yes or no? Okay, yes. Where are we with that? And then I wanted to lose 5 pounds this month. Did we lose 5 pounds? Okay, no, we didn't. What do I got to do better? Okay, maybe cut back on this food a little bit. do another 15, 20 minutes of exercise every day. You know, am I getting the proper sleep? Am I feeling healthy? Is there something that's on my mind that's bothering me that I need to just address and get it over with right now? And a lot of times, just looking yourself in the mirror and the stuff you say to yourself, it's almost like you can talk to yourself in the future. It's weird the dynamic of doing it in the mirror, but you know, you do this better, or you gotta quit this, or you're doing great on this. Keep it up. Like just having someone to look at you and basically speak back to you. It's like it's a magical feeling, you know. So that's why I do it.
For sure. Well, that's the ultimate accountability, right? Looking at yourself in the mirror, actually looking in your own eyes and being able to confront yourself. That is the ultimate level of accountability. And I like that you're doing it basically like a Senate hearing, or like the Romans used to do, where the
Yeah.
Senate would come and address ideas. And speaking of obviously being named Roman, I'm sure you've looked at the Roman Empire and been inspired by that too. That's what it sounds like. But that's the idea that I get. It's almost like a Senate hearing where you bring the objectives to light and look at the pros and cons and whether we're on track or not, and then reassess. And then, do you have any ways to make sure you execute on that? So once you wrap up this accountability meeting with yourself, how do you get into action for the next 3 months?
So the best way I do it is I write down what I'm going to do for the week, prepared already, and then I write down what I'm going to do each day. So the things that happen each day usually end up changing quite rapidly, which is kind of normal for my schedule, but the things for the week usually stay the same that I have set out. So I know how much time I have, which is the first step. How much time do I have to dedicate to doing something like this? Whether that's studying, working, networking, marketing, which are the main four I'm doing right now. I do I have this program that transfers text into speech. So I can have my car read me documents basically while I'm driving. So that's one way to get all the things that I would need to read for that day out of the way. So it's really about trying to think ahead, but be as fluid as possible. Because you can get stuck up on a day where you get done at 7, but you still got like 4 hours of work to do, and you can just say, forget it, I'll do it tomorrow. But that pushes everything else in the schedule down. So having a schedule is the best way to be accountable, in my opinion.
Sure. I think anybody as busy as you, or anybody who's making excuses for being busy, could take some notes from this, because we're all busy. Entrepreneurs are all busy. So every time
Oh,
I
yeah.
hear that, it's you're not the only one. Everybody's busy. And when you're in business for yourself, you got a million hats to wear and a million things to get done. And it seems like it's a never-ending battle to, knock things off the to-do list and get projects done and everything else. At least if you're growing and expanding, there's always more to do. There's
There's so
too
much.
much to do and too little time. That's just
Right.
the reality of business, right? So it seems like this practice that you have is not only self accountability and self reflection and self awareness, but you're also finding a way to prioritize time, to really prioritize tasks, to prioritize what gets done, which is what I really like about that. How did this originally come about? Where did you get this idea from initially?
Oh, well, I actually got it in the classroom in college. I was sitting next to a guy who looked like he was 40 years old, and I'm like, "What you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just getting my business degree." I was like, "That's cool. What do you do? You must have had a career before this or something." He's like, "Yeah, I own a trucking company." And I got really fascinated by that. I'm like, "This guy owns a trucking company and he's going back to college for business to learn probably everything he already knows." And I was just asking him like, "What's something you do every day?" He's like, "I just whatever I can do to be accountable." He was like, "I look myself in the mirror and I just talk to myself." He said, "You don't have to do it every day, but get in the habit of talking to yourself and getting comfortable being around you." He said that's going to take you far.
That is an interesting story. It's funny. They always say, colleges, universities aren't for the degree itself or for, the knowledge you're learning there, because chances are in the real world, in the business world, through self education, through courses, trainings, specified knowledge, you can learn a lot more. That's just the reality.
Oh yeah.
But they always say it's for the relationships that you build, it's for the network that you can expand on these campuses. And this is a
Mhm.
perfect example of that. So you're in this classroom, and just from starting a conversation with this guy next to you, you get this idea for this practice, and now it's become a pivotal part of your monthly or quarterly routine. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. Anything else you learned from this gentleman? Because it seems like he was a pretty wise individual.
Yeah, he told me he's like read contracts. He said, don't just take people's word for things. You got to trust but verify. He said you got to trust and verify with yourself too, but you got to trust and verify on the outside because people will try to take advantage of you if you don't. And he said his advice was basically stand up for yourself, both internally and externally. It was very much about knowing yourself and understanding who you really are and truly are because you can change. You just have to know what to change. If you're not, if you're like on a map and you don't know where you are, how are you supposed to know where you're supposed to get to?
Mhm.
So he was very much about inner self.
Yeah, I like that advice. And I also really like the practical advice that he gave you, which is to read contracts, trust people, but always verify for yourself. That definitely comes from his real business experience, from actually
Yeah.
owning a trucking company, because those are things that you really only learn the hard way. I've learned a lot of these lessons about contracts and details and negotiations and whatnot, being in the sales and business world. And sometimes you do have to learn these businesses the hard way, and deals fall apart, and negotiations fall apart, and contracts fall apart, and you get to really learn the ins and outs. But it sounds like that came from his real experience, which is extremely valuable that you were able to, get that at such a young age just by off chance meeting this individual. Um, on that same topic, I know you've had mentors throughout your journey in the construction space, in the verticals that you've been in. What are some of the things that you've learned from those mentors? What has been really helpful for you, and what has been the value of mentorship for you in general?
So I do have a group of men in my life, and they are all men. Nothing against women. It's just I. The only woman I listen to in my life is my mom. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just how it is statistically for me. The biggest things they've taught me is really going back to that accountability and looking at myself and basically playing life. They say treat life like it's a game. Have fun with it, but understand the rules of it as well. You got to know if you're in battle, the rules of engagement, just like you got to know the rules if you're going to school. You got to know the rules to life. So they gave me a couple books to read. One of them was Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules of Life. Very good book. I would recommend it to anyone who is struggling with figuring out where they are, having structure in their life. They also gave me a book by Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Human Nature, or I'm sorry, The Laws of Human Nature. Basically, I ask them questions quite frequently of things I'm about to do or things I want to do, and I'll ask for their advice. And I'm okay with having people in my life that can tell me, yeah, no, you're not doing that. I don't want a yes man that's just telling me, oh yeah, that sounds great. Go and do that, and just no advice. I'd rather have people that are a lot older and wiser than me, that have made mistakes in their life, that I can learn from. Because they say a wise man will learn from his mistakes, but a wiser man will learn from those of others. So, really trying to harness their energy is one thing, like how they speak, their mannerisms, and just kind of see how they act as a person. I can learn a lot from just body language and stuff like that. Um, but also really taking their advice because knowing that they love me and I love them, and it's a deep relationship. It's not just for business, but it's for we have each other's backs. I'm a lot younger, so my resources are a lot smaller than theirs, but I'm always willing to help those who are willing to talk to me or help me.
For sure. Well, it seems like you've chosen these mentors based on specific criteria, and they actually are in a position to give you advice on what they're giving you advice on. And at the same time, it seems like they see potential in you and they want to be able to positively impact your life. So I think those type of relationships are extremely valuable. I've had mentors like that all along the way myself, and they've given me a lot of great guidance. And like you said, why would I go and waste years and waste tons of money and most importantly my time to try to learn these mistakes myself or make the same mistakes and learn from them, where I can just borrow somebody else's experience and get ahead of the game, right? It's just a much
Right.
smarter way to learn. But how important do you think it is to have mentors? How important do you think the power of a mentorship like that is for somebody who's young and trying to find their path?
I think being having mentors, you got to first be selective. You got to know what kind of people you're looking to learn from. The biggest thing with mentors is their experience. So for me, it was about people who had businesses or were very prosperous in their life, and just learning how they did that. And a lot of the advice that I was taught as a kid in school, a lot of these guys teach something different. Like, so I learned to basically take what I learned with a grain of salt in school, but apply what people were teaching me, that what actually worked, into my life. And I saw more effectiveness when I learned basically how someone did it before I went and tried to do it myself. Like a week ago, I didn't know anything about website design or website building, and a week later, after talking to like three people about websites pretty rigorously, I had one. And I don't think I would have ever been able to do that without someone that had the experience and guidance and told me, no, don't use this, use that, do this, do that. And it really fast tracks the process of learning, which is the biggest thing with mentors, in my opinion, is you can ask them anything and they'll give you a realistic answer. So all those dreams that you had that you want to put into fruition, you can learn what's realistic about it and what's not, and they can put you in your place as necessary, which I think is good for all of us, because you don't want too big of an ego where you think you're unstoppable, but you want enough motivation to where you think you can achieve what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's very well put. And I like that you have that criteria of assessing their actual experience. So they're not talking from a place of books or theory. They're talking
Right,
from a place of real, tangible experience. I agree with that. I think nowadays more than ever, that's important to really look at in any type of mentor or somebody that you're listening to. And another piece on this mentorship deal is also, if you take advice from somebody, whatever area that is, you have to be willing to trade places with them in that area, because that's what that means. When you're listening to somebody and wanting to apply their advice is going to get you where it's gotten them, right? So if I'm giving you sales advice, first of all, I do have the experience to back it up. And second of all, that advice is going to get you to the level of sales acumen and sales knowledge that I have. So you would want that. But if I'm giving you advice on something that I have no expertise on and no knowledge on, and also no results on in my own life, then you don't want to take that advice, because I can only give you advice from a place of my own experiences. And I think that's really important. So, you can have somebody giving you advice on a specific area, and that's fine if they give you good advice there, but it doesn't mean that they can give you good advice in all areas. You have to
right.
actually look at their own lives and see where they have the results. And if they have the results, then you listen to the advice. This is the classic case of, family members or friends or associates giving you, for example, relationship advice. And then you look at the person and they've been, in a few unhealthy relationships and they're currently single, but they're happily giving you, long-term relationship advice. That's just not how it works, right? You want long-term relationship advice, you talk to somebody who's been married for 30 years and you ask them how they've done it. They can really tell you because they've actually done it. So
Right.
the same goes for any area, for any part of life. So I'm definitely with you there. And I think, again, for younger individuals nowadays, in the information age that we're in, because we have so much information available to us, it's actually made it more difficult for people to really focus on the areas that they need to pursue and the people they need to listen to. There's an overflow of information. The floodgates are open and you're getting information left and right, and it's causing people to become overly confused, and it's actually leading to inaction as opposed to that information helping you take action, right? So let me ask you this. What are some ways that you put up guardrails against that flow of information, against, for example, social media, against, all these so-called gurus giving advice, against, negativity, media, whatever else? How do you control all of that information coming your direction?
Well, luckily, a lot of these social media apps have algorithms. Twitter has an algorithm, YouTube has an algorithm, TikTok has an algorithm. So I can thumbs down pretty much anything I don't like, and it'll stop showing me those videos. So I've been able to pretty much get my feed to be just things that I want to see. That's going to be business motivation. That's going to be construction videos. That's going to be lifestyle videos, just stuff that I can rely on being correct. But a lot of misinformation comes from other people. You can't, and people don't have algorithms. You can't get people to tell you what you want to hear. I trust, but I verify everything I hear. So I won't try to trip someone up or tell them they're wrong, because that usually doesn't go well for people that tend to have more misinformation than right information. The other day, I quit vaping about a month and a half ago, and I was so convinced that nicotine was good for you, like it was supposed to help boost testosterone and all these other things. And then I read this study. They're like, what happens when you put nicotine on plants? They just die. I'm like, well, that can't be good. So
Mhm.
it really changed my mindset. But there are things that you hear that you want to believe, and those are the toughest things to prove yourself or prove it wrong. You want to believe certain things are happening. You want to believe certain things are going well, whether that's in politics or whatever else. But if you don't verify or you don't see the problem for what it actually is, you can't provide in feedback for solutions. Because that's really what most conversations are. Is it's just problems and solutions.
Right. Yeah, on the nicotine topic specifically, I'm not an expert there. I would point people to individuals like Andrew Huberman and his podcast Huberman Lab. He shares a ton of amazing information. He's an actual scientist. He backs it up with the research, and he's very diligent and also very objective, which is important to have in somebody who's giving you biological or scientific information.
Yes.
And he's got great episodes on all types of different things like nicotine or marijuana or alcohol and the effects on the body and positive and negative effects and everything else. So people can check that out and do their own research and make their own decisions. That being said, generally speaking, there's no biological free lunch, as they say, right? There is no, thing that you can get without any downsides or without any negative impacts on your health or on your cognitive or physical health. So long story short, congratulations on stopping vaping. I'm happy for you, and I have no doubt that you're gonna stay disciplined and stay on that path. There are all kinds of pieces of information from all kinds of experts, and we can go back to business. It's the same thing in the business world. There are all kinds of conflicting pieces of information from different so-called experts or different entrepreneurs. And again, this confuses a lot of younger individuals. And people want to copy that individual because they want that individual's results. But the reality is that's just not how it works. And I think that's the lesson that you've just learned with the whole vaping and nicotine topic. But that's a lesson that I learned as well in the business world. And I think it's important for everybody else listening to this to just borrow our experience and learn that lesson. When you're looking at somebody and idolizing somebody, first things first, you probably just shouldn't, period. I don't care if it's myself, if it's you, if it's anybody else. No human being, no individual is worthy of idolizing because everybody has their positive traits and everybody has their negative traits, right? I'm a student of history myself. I love to study history. I'm always digging deep into history, all different time periods. And I'm very fascinated by historic figures. And a lot of times you would be very surprised when you learn about their day to day habits, when you learn about their lives, when you learn about the lack of relationships in their lives, when you learn about how they treated close family members, whatever else it may be. And these are great conquerors, great individuals in history. They've accomplished a lot. So it's important to realize, no individual is worthy of idolizing, first of all. And second of all, everyone's path is different. Everyone's life is different. Everyone's nature is different. Something that may work for you may not work for me. And something that may work for me may not work for you. So when you're looking at, back to nowadays, looking at entrepreneurs, business owners wanting to emulate their routines, habits, if somebody's smoking cigarettes and saying nicotine is a cognitive enhancer and helps me write books and whatever else it might be, it doesn't mean that, first of all, there's no downside to that. And second of all, it doesn't mean that's going to work for you. You're not taking into consideration everything else that that individual has going for them that is allowing them to reach those levels of success. It's not about one thing. It's an accumulation of nature, nurture, and so many other things that play into creating a successful life. So I think this is, generally speaking, a big mistake people make. Looking at somebody and looking at their habit and thinking, if I just do that, I can become who they are or I can have what they have. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean everyone's different, so I feel like you gotta cater things to what works best for you. It's like because not everyone, it's things aren't gonna work out for you the same way they did for someone else. So you got to be able to plan and take initiative and understand that and be ready to fall back or move forward or take the steps necessary to do what you're trying to accomplish. We could all look at Steve Jobs or, Mark Zuckerberg and be like, oh, so that's how he created a website. I can do that overnight. It's like, no, you can't. It doesn't
Right.
happen all in one night. You gotta prepare. You gotta do all these different steps to get to that place. So looking at someone and thinking it's easy is also another thing people I think get mixed up. It's like being an entrepreneur is not easy because your work and life balance is way off tilted all the
Hmm.
time. Anytime you think you're about to go to a planning or a family event, you end up getting a call, and next thing you know, you're on that call for 2.5 hours, and it's like that's just the life of it. So you got to look at the happy side of it, but you also got to be able to look at what you're preparing to, for like the storm.
Yeah, and this is why I believe it's not about what works, it's about what works for you. And the
Hmm.
same thing goes for success, right? Like you mentioned, being an entrepreneur is much harder than working a regular job, working within a company, being in a sales role, all these things that I've done in the past. And being in business for yourself is by far the hardest thing that you can do. But at the same time, if you're the right person, if you naturally are inclined to be an entrepreneur, to work for yourself, if this is your purpose, it's also the most rewarding and the most fulfilling. So there's both sides to that coin. But like you said, work life balance or any concept of balance is pretty much non-existent, at least until you reach certain stages.
Right.
And then you can incorporate that and choose where you want to give your attention to. But I'm definitely with you there as well. Let me ask you about looking ahead into the next year, or generally speaking, into the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years. What are some things? I'll ask you an open blanket question. I mean, you can take this wherever you like, but just generally speaking, what are some things that you think about when you're thinking about the future? What are some things that you focus on, that you look at, whether it's improving yourself personally, whether it's your business verticals that you're involved in? How do you see things when you're looking into the future?
So I like to stay caught up on my industry. I go to a lot of seminars within the home inspecting industry. So I try to learn what these other guys are doing that's working, what's not working. One guy will tell you cold calling's the way to go, another guy will tell you don't do that. It's interesting to see all these different perspectives, and some guys check this when they go in a house, some guys check that when they go in a house. So learning all those different perspectives and seeing what works best for you. And I've learned to like kind of nitpick and kind of say cherry pick rather and kind of say this is going to work for me, that's not going to work for me. And like things like cold calling, like I outsource that. I got a couple buddies now that are working for me and they're doing all that for me, so I don't have to cold call anymore. It gives me more time to actually build more deep connections rather than just picking up a phone with someone that probably doesn't want to hear what you have to say in the first place and doing all that. So a lot of it is trying to figure out how I can afford to purchase more time to do the things that I need to do. So obviously with inspections, I'm doing those myself. I don't have any inspectors under my belt yet. So that's 3 or 4 hours. That's going to be an inspection. But the rest of the time is really most of the time I spend with inspections is just building relationships with realtors and clients and really getting that feedback. And I offer free feedback all the time. I say, please feel free to call me at any moment in the day if you have any questions about anything. I'm not going to charge you. I just, would rather be able to help you out in any way I can. So I do get those calls where people are just asking me basic questions. How does this work? If you saw this, would you be scared? Stuff like that. But it's not money coming in the door, but it's those relationships that I'm really trying to cater and really bake until it's right.
It sounds to me like you're very much prioritizing relationships, like you've mentioned throughout this entire conversation. So that definitely seems to be a priority for you, which I'm fully on board with. I think it's extremely important. Um, And it also sounds like you've learned to take yourself out of the business and have, for example, your team handling the cold calls, so that as opposed to being in the business and involved, all day long with things like client acquisition and all the different sales aspects of things, but to actually work on the business. And then the third piece that I saw that is really important is you're prioritizing the customer experience, right? And in any industry, you're not competing with a business, you're not competing with their products, their services, their price points. You're competing with the last great experience that they had, right? So the last time they spoke with somebody in your line of work and they had a great experience, that's what you're competing with. Your job is to top that experience and deliver a top-notch experience. So it seems like you're really prioritizing that as well and letting people know, hey, if you have questions, come to me. If you need help, come to me. I'm more than happy to help and over deliver on the value here. So those are some takeaways for me personally, and I really like that you're doing that. I think those are all traits of any great entrepreneur and any business that's going to be around long term.
Yeah, another thing I do is I'll tell them up front if I find something that's safety or life threatening that I can repair and I have the knowledge to do so, I'll fix it for free. Like this one lady had a hole in her crawl space where she had a rodent problem coming in. And I was like, all it's going to take is some foam. I'll just do it myself. And I'm not going to charge you because you can't, as an inspector, it's against the code of ethics to charge people to do repairs, but it doesn't say you can do them for free. So that's just another way that I add value because they can say, you're not going to believe this. This home inspector came and he actually fixed this for free. That goes a long ways because people are going to talk about that.
For sure. And in today's world, some people like to say word of mouth or referral business is no longer a factor. I would say it's more of a factor than ever before because
Yeah,
social media, the online space, the accessibility to get your voice out there is more prevalent than ever. So those messages are only going to be amplified. That referral business is only going to be amplified. People are only going to talk more and it's going to reach more people when they say positive things about you, and the reverse is true as well. So you want to make sure that it is positive.
right.
I love the outlook and everything that you're doing. I think you're always setting yourself up for success, which is great to see on a personal level with your accountability practice, on a business front with the relationships you're building and the over delivery of value. It's all great to see. So as we wrap up here, I want to ask you a question that I ask everybody, and I'm curious to hear your answer. This is something that I used to ask all the time when I was younger and going to different conferences and building my relationships back in those days. And it's something that I like to ask and get answers to nowadays. Knowing everything that you know today and the person that you are today, if you could go back to your younger self and give yourself only one piece of advice, what would you tell yourself?
That's easy. I'll tell myself don't quit. Whatever it is, if you're down on life and you think you're gonna end it all, don't quit. If you having a tough time in class and you thinking it's all worthless, don't quit. If you're reaching that hump in your business, just don't quit. Because oftentimes it's those defining moments that are gonna define your whole life. So whatever it is, just don't quit.
Well, that came to you pretty quick. So I could tell that resonates with you. And I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people as well. It's definitely a powerful message. Thank you so much for your time today, Roman. I think this is a valuable conversation that people can take a lot away from. I would definitely encourage them to go back and re listen to some of the areas that we covered. For anybody who wants to get in touch with you or just hear more from you, where can they find you?
Um, it's just Roman Korowin. It's my full name, RomanKorowin. You can also reach me at alphasmartinspections.com. There's a message link in there where you can leave me a brief message, or if you want to reach me out on email, it's just romank at alphasmartinspections.com.
Perfect. And we'll make sure to put all those links in the notes as well so people can easily access it and reach out to you. Again, Roman, thanks so much for your time today, and we'll chat with you soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Pouya. Have a good one.